What is up, everyone? This is a fixed audio version of the 8 reasons why Subnautica Below Zero failed. I know that the last video had a little bit too loud of background music, so now that I have a better microphone, I am re-recording this. So after seeing tons of comments across multiple platforms of social media of people bashing Subnautica Below Zero, I decided to make a video that explains 8 reasons why Below Zero failed in comparison to Part 1. With the confirmed production of Subnautica 3 we've all heard about, I certainly hope that the creators do get a chance to watch my video and get some ideas so that way they don't repeat previous mistakes. So now, to be very clear though, Below Zero, it's one of my favorite games. It's very beautifully made. It's a beautiful game. And if you have not played Below Zero, then you are missing out on a really great game. And I strongly recommend that you do play it. But this is more of a constructive criticism video that it's not, I repeat, not hate video. So this is mostly a collection of common complaints that you will see on the internet, as well as my own personal opinions. So let's get started. First of all, the atmosphere is completely different in Below Zero compared to Part 1. Instead of crash landing in Part 1 and barely surviving after getting hit on the head by flying debris, in Below Zero you are a character that chooses to go to 4546B to investigate the disappearance of your sister. And as soon as you land, you walk straight through a linear path surrounded by ice with almost an enclosed safe shallows area. Now in Part 1, you crash land into a completely unknown area with absolutely no idea what's down there below you, and no other choice but to explore the unknown. Most of the areas in Below Zero have been previously explored by scientists with bases in random locations, and so this human presence, it gives you this sense of familiarity and comfort. In Part 1, however, nothing has been explored and you are surrounded by a deep alien ocean in all directions. The entire map in Below Zero is surrounded by glaciers, right? This too completely changes the way that you feel. Subnautica, as many of you know, sparks certain phobias such as thalassophobia, which is the fear of deep water. But the water in Part 1 is much deeper and more vast than Below Zero. And while Below Zero can still trigger this phobia, it's not nearly as intense. Part 1 can also trigger kinophobia, which is the fear of empty spaces or voids, and is very similar to agoraphobia, which is the fear of being in situations where escape might be difficult or that help wouldn't be available if things go wrong. These are two phobias that Below Zero also lacks in intensity. So let's break this down. Part 1, surrounded by much deeper ocean on all sides, no idea what's out there, and no chance of immediate escape without exploring to search for parts of the rocket. Part 2, you know where you're at, your character has seen pictures and no doubt videos of the place before even going there. You feel a familiar human presence, and you're stuck in a previously explored region, but with a general idea of how to leave the planet once you have the information you need. In Below Zero, everything is more aimed towards claustrophobia, with extremely tight spaces throughout the map, and while this can no doubt scare many people, it would seem that this has not generated the same level of fear as Part 1. DLC or an add-on to Part 1. So a smaller map in this case made sense, but as soon as the decision to make Below Zero a separate game was made, the map should have immediately been expanded. There's no excuse to have your company's flagship title with less content in Part 2 than its predecessor. I know that this is debated because it's not technically Part 2, but it is a separate game regardless. I think all they had to do was to take the map that they had built and simply stretch it out. leaving more room in between biomes and more repeating biomes. And if the map had been bigger with an endless stretch of ocean in all directions, well, the feeling would have been much more terrifying. Okay, so I'm not going to knock on the Leviathans much in this game. Okay, maybe I am. They look awesome, though. Their designs are very creative, and I absolutely love the Shadow Leviathan. However, the fear factor just isn't there. So, the big question is why? Why are the Leviathans in Part 1 so terrifying, but in Below Zero they're mostly just annoying? I believe it is the way that they were implemented that prevents them from reaching their full potential. Let me explain each one by one here. So let's start with my favorite one, the Shadow Leviathan. While he certainly looks terrifying and he has a great design, he was placed in an extremely small crystal cave area, and he's almost impossible to avoid. You will be piloting this large and sluggish sea truck, which we will be talking about later. So you will be seeing this animation dozens and dozens of times before you finally beat the game, and he will eventually just become a nuisance. Plus, you will know when he's coming each time because the area is so small, there's no jump scare. Take a look at all of his tiny legs. He almost gives this centipede or insect-like kind of look. Can you imagine just how creepy he would be if he was crawling on the walls like a roach for stealth, and in one quick motion, bam, he just launches out at you when you get close, and you don't even see it coming. Now that would definitely creep me out. Let's talk about the ice worm now. So, knowing that they are limited to this one specific region puts the player at ease. I don't understand why they weren't placed in other parts of the landmass. Remember, it's the fear of the unknown that freaks most people out, right? So if their appearance could be expanded to other areas, that would no doubt catch the player off guard. So I'm going to take a guess here, and I'm going to say that if this guy absolutely had to, he could swim. Wouldn't it be terrifying if the ice worm could swim to other large glaciers and appear out of nowhere, only to attack you whenever you get close to the glacier? There are real-life worms that attack from underwater, and these are called bobbit worms. Now, for the record, I absolutely hate worms. They're disgusting. The bobbit worm freaks me out a lot more than the ice worm. Sure, the ice worm is huge, but if it had the ability to attack the player from below while you're underwater, now that would be terrifying. The Chelicerates has a really well thought out design, a large fish-like crustacean. It's a cool concept, and I have found him scary at times when he pops out at you. His mouth design clearly makes him the Reaper Leviathan replacement, but all you have to do is compare these two small beady eyes to the face of the Reaper. That human-like face alone is nightmare fuel, and while I do like the Chelicerates, his fear factor just doesn't compare. Perhaps he should have been darker than a bright red, maybe more spikes. I'm not so sure on this one, but regarding these Leviathans, while it's undeniable that Unknown Worlds has some amazing ideas and are an incredibly talented team, I believe their biggest weakness is knowing how to implement some of these designs. So in harmony with the Leviathan topic, we have here a few creature concepts that never made it to Below Zero. Leviathans that many of us were anxiously awaiting to see. The Ice Dragon and Kitewing Skyray. We all understand that every game out there has cut content during production. Even Subnautica 1 did. But when you announce something like a Leviathan in this case, and get an overwhelming amount of positive feedback over it, it's probably not a good idea to cut it out from the game. Many fans were extremely disappointed and felt that the land area needed more wildlife, and a Kitewing would have added more to that. Plus, with the map being so small, an extra biome for the Ice Dragon would have solved two of this game's issues and pleased more fans. So I'm going to start this topic off by saying I completely understand why Below Zero has only a smaller vehicle. The lack of having a Cyclops angered fans, but with such a small map, there just isn't enough room to require the use of a larger vehicle. The sea truck, however, can still get stuck in tight spaces once you start adding more attachments. Also, the lack of speed can be quite frustrating, especially when you can't escape oncoming Leviathans. At the very least, we could have been given the Sea Moth to go along with it. With all of the modded submersibles we have available in Subnautica 1, it's obvious that players want more submarines. The Snow Fox is completely, utterly worthless. The time and resources needed to build one simply doesn't justify the need for its brief use. With so many tight caves and corridors, even the area that it's designed for severely limits its use. And to top all of that off, it can't even hover over water. Thankfully, there is a mod that fixes this, but if you're a console player, you're better off exploring the land area in your prawn suit instead. Okay, love it or hate it, and many hate it, the story turned out alright in my opinion. But if you didn't follow early access, then you wouldn't know that the story and even the main voice actress changed several times. This was frustrating for many that liked the direction the previous story was going in and preferred the other voice actress. The original story and lore writer for Subnautica 1 is named Tom Hubert. He quit mid-production of Below Zero for unclarified reasons. As a result, Below Zero took a much different turn when the new writer Jill Murray took over. Now, from what I have heard from random sources, Tom was more of a survival lore writer and did not feel comfortable writing the story Below Zero required with voice lines and dialogue. However, this answer that we were given for him leaving the team raises questions and much speculation as to whether or not there was a different reason. It's possible Below Zero could have been more successful had he never have left, but we'll never know. Subnautica 1 has always had some land in it. You get 2 islands, a shipwreck to explore on foot, but that was it. And the lack of large land masses in itself, knowing you're stuck on this large water world, can be a frightening thought. In Below Zero, we expect there to be icebergs, of course, but the land area of the game is something most players, including myself, absolutely dread. It isn't fun at all. It's built like a maze, and it's far too separated from the rest of the map. And it is simply too large. Like, once you're there, you're stuck there for a while before you're able to return to the water. This is not what players have in mind when they decide to buy a game titled Subnautica. Since the landmass is too isolated, I believe there should have been several locations where the ocean could have been accessible so you wouldn't feel so stuck in that area of the game, and the landmass should have been more of an island so that the feeling of being surrounded by ocean still could be felt. In Subnautica 1, you start the game off having absolutely no idea what to do first. You scan, you explore, and you scan things some more. And eventually, after hours and hours, you find out that there is indeed a story to it, with alien architecture surrounded in mystery. This is the way most survival games are. In fact, it's the process of figuring things out for yourself that makes them so appealing. But in Below Zero, you have Al-An in your head, and instead of feeling lost, he guides you from one location to the next on your map instead of the player finding these locations on their own. This creates a linear gameplay, and thus removes any of the elements of a true survival game. But Al-An being in your head isn't the problem. What his character should have been was a lost soul, one that could have remembered bits and pieces of his past, but not enough to actually pinpoint exact locations on your map. So what did you think of my analysis? As I wrote this, I realized that most of these issues really all connect back to the game having a smaller map. If the map had been bigger, most of this would not have been a problem. But let me know what you think in the comments. Leave a like and subscribe if you like this video. Peace out, guys.